A unique Assyrian relief with Aramaic text was found beneath a Turkish house. First came the robbers, then the cops, then the archaeologists. This is the only Assyrian relief ever found underground, and with Aramaic names for gods. Now, Assyria, a terrifying superpower for hundreds of years. It began humbly enough, as a Mesopotamian city-state in about the 21st century BCE, and would rise during the Iron Age to become a mighty empire. In its heyday, the Middle Assyrian period from the 14th to the 12th centuries BCE, its sphere of influence sprawled from Egypt to the west to Babylon and the Persian Gulf in the east. Its spread resulted, among other things, in the Assyrian exile, resulting, according to tradition, in the 10 lost tribes of Israel. And between about 900 and 600 BCE, the Neo-Assyrian period, the Assyrians expanded into southeastern Anatolia. It is there, today, southeastern Turkey, that a subterranean compound carved into the bedrock was discovered in 2017 in the village of Babusk. Professor Mehet Onal of the University of Haran and his colleagues reported last week in Antiquity. Now, inside this site, the archaeologists discovered the only Neo-Assyrian relief known to have been created underground, spanning almost 4 meters in width and showing a frieze of 8 gods. The frieze was not finished. For this revelation, we can thank thieves who cut a huge hole, 2.2 by 1.5 meters, or 7.2 by 4.9 feet into the floor of a 2-story house in Bozkurt in 2016. We can also thank the police who nabbed the wrongdoers the following year. A rescue excavation was pursued, and the extent of the underground complex was revealed, as was an extraordinary work of art. Small, the complex is not. Just the entrance chamber, accessed by the thief hole, is 3.2 meters wide and 4.3 meters in height. It leads to a gallery. The archaeologists describe, which is 8.5 meters wide and 5 meters high. Steps lead to a lower gallery that was dug out to a length of over 30 meters, and it may go on much, much further. The exploration has only just begun. Amazing. Now, the excavation had to halt after a couple of months because it was unstable and will be continued in the future. But meanwhile, the archaeologists removed enough sediment that had accrued over the ages to discover the relief in the upper gallery. The compound had been carved into the bedrock during the Neo-Assyrian period. It has no relationship to the underground cities of Cappadocia, which were created some 1,500 years before and are believed to have served as a refuge from marauders. It must be an underground cult structure. Partly similar is the tomb of Mithridates and Comagni Arsimia, the archaeologist adds. Within that artificial cavern, carved into the bedrock, artists began, but apparently did not finish, a wall relief almost 4 meters in length. Time-worn but unmistakably Assyrian in style, the panel shows a procession of 8 major gods, according to the archaeologists. Moreover, The first three gods are accompanied by inscriptions. The gods are Syro-Anatolian, but their names are Aramaic in style and in writing. This is the only Neo-Assyrian relief found to date that has Aramaic text. The archaeologists say, and as said, is the only Neo-Assyrian relief ever to be discovered underground. Though one was found in a cave at the source of the Tigris, the team philologist Dr. Salim Fihru Adai qualifies. Now, what's it doing beneath the earth in southeastern Anatolia? That would be a good question. Is it possible that this was a ritual place associated with the water sources or the place of contact with the gods of the underworld? The fact that god and goddess figures keep ears of wheat or have an ear of wheat pattern on their heads shows that this monument may be related to fertility, products, and water. And the fact that the settlement is located on the hill overlooking the plain also supports this view. But aren't all archaeological sites in Turkey on hills? Like Göbekli Tepe on the Potbelly Hill? Now, the unique style of Assyrian relief art, well, it's mind-blowing. And it emerged about 3,500 years ago. Engraved into soft alabaster or other rock, the reliefs are often found in the context of royal architecture. Not exclusively, of course, because this relief is underground in a whole cave. Now, there is this new one we're talking about, which is actually in an underground complex in a vassal village in Turkey. There are also monumental reliefs carved into inaccessible cliff faces and more. Assyrian reliefs typically show scenes of hunting or war kings or gods, battles, and the subjugated and the gods, sometimes riding mythical animals. The Assyrians were apparently a terrifying force to behold. The entire region quailed before them and their legendary brutality, as was their wont. The Assyrian conquerors reduced rulers who survived their onslaughts to vassals and turned the small local kingdoms into Assyrian provinces. There is thinking that they never conquered Jerusalem during their massive campaigns because they were bribed, and the king of Jerusalem served as their vassal. As they did in Anatolia, which had been divided into city-states, whether to toady, to show off their contacts, or for their practical reasons, the invassaled monarchs and caudilites typically adopted elements of Assyrian court style that they combined with local elements. Which brings us back to the Aramaic inscriptions. When the Assyrians arrived, the tongues spoken in southeastern Anatolia were Luwian and Aramaic. The relief found underground at Bosbuk could be an emblematic merger of Assyrian with local motifs, telling a tale of integration rather than violent acquisition. The archaeologists also note other examples of this cultural negotiation between Assyrian and Armenian expressions of power, such as the 9th century BCE Neo-Assyrian period basalt statue found in Tel Fahraya in Syria. It bears an inscription in both Aramaic and Assyrian Akkadian by its Armenian governor, Hadigal, which, among other things, heaps terrible curses on any who dare remove his name from objects. The least of them is may illness, plague, and insomnia not disappear from his land. Now, back in Babusk, or Baskbuk, the relief shows a procession of 8 gods, of whom the archaeologists can identify half of. partly by iconography and partly because the first three are associated with Aramaic inscriptions. Now, the tallest of the carved figures was 1.1 meters in height. Now, the procession begins with Hadad, aka Adad, aka none other than Baal, the storm god, and nemesis of Yahweh cult. In keeping with his image in those parts, northern Syria and southeast Anatolia, Hadad grips a triple lightning fork and wears a double-horned helmet, crowned with a star. Depicted as bigger than the other gods, his image is similar in some ways to those found elsewhere, but his hairstyling is different, and other depictions show a rosette in his crown. Anyway, much in keeping with scripture, Baal has a knife and is shown with one. An Ishtar-type goddess who also has a double-horned starred crown, and again, her image is akin to others found elsewhere. One caveat that the authors stress is that iconography alone cannot be definitive of Hadad and Ishtar, because these attributes were also ascribed to local deities, some of whom would receive the same descriptions plus geographic epithets. Baal itself was rather a morphing entity and name. But moving on. The third in line in the sacred procession is wearing headgear, crowned by a crescent and a full moon, suggesting this is none other than Sin, the moon god of Haran, who is followed by Shamash, the sun god. The archaeologists interpret who the other four might be remains a mystery, but the bottom line is that the style is definitively Assyrian, down to the form of the male facial hair, which resembles depictions of the great leaders of that time, including Assurbanipal and Shalmaneser III. It bears adding that the headgear is Syro-Anatolian in style rather than Neo-Assyrian, as are the necklaces. Now, what do the inscriptions say? One is between Hadad and Ishtar. One is on Ishtar's right shoulder, and one is on Sin's right shoulder. In fact, there is also a longer Aramaic text carved into the rock next to Hadad's hat, but it can't be made out currently. Preliminary readings of the inscriptions that can be made out identify the gods, and the text between Hadad and Ishtar apparently reads HDD. Now, this is according to the archaeologists, and here's the picture. Aramaic, like Hebrew, is written without vowels, which supports the leading deity's identification as the storm god. The text on Ishtar's shoulder reads TRT and is, they postulate, an early variant of a goddess named Syriac or Atar Ate. This is, the archaeologists write, the earliest explicit Aramaic language reference to the goddess who would become known in later historical references as Atargatis, a major deity in Syria from about 300 BCE through the 3rd century CE. And she was perceived as a fertility goddess married to Hadad. Now, we are quite confident of the readings of the divine names, according to the archaeologists. The text to the right of the storm god is less clear, however. The iconography is key to the identifications. Plus, the readings are based on photographs of the panel. Once the site is stabilized and the excavations can resume, more information should be forthcoming. Now, moving on to the moon god. On his chest There we are. It appears an archaic letter form crowned with a crescent that is known to represent this deity in Haran. And is also known from elsewhere, including the Tel Fakhariah inscription. The archaeologists believe the moon god text reads SY and may read SYN. And there is another inscription which the archaeologists believe spells out the name of man, not a superpower, Mukin Abua. Who was this? A Neo-Assyrian official during the reign of King Adad Nirari III, who reigned from 811 to 783 BCE, the team says. Now they postulate that he ruled the region where Bashbuk now lies, and may have ordered the artwork done and credited in the village to integrate with and win over the locals. The name also appears once in the Assyrians' annals. Adalai adds for the year 749 BCE, describing his official appointment. So what have we here? Nobody knows. But it's certainly a coming together of societies through bas relief inscriptions. And this underground manse in southeastern Anatolia near the border of Syria is mind-blowing. A relief showing gods in a Syro-Anatolian context in the Neo-Assyrian style, showing from right to left Hadad Baal, Atar Ata, Sin the moon god, Shamash the sun god, and after that it isn't clear, but they are also clearly deities. But the work was not completed. The archaeologists are postulating why. Why? Because the panel is 2.5 meters in height, but the figure of Hadad Baal is only 1.1 meters. And missing the body, which indicates that the work was not finished and was ongoing. Now, the incisions in the rock are about 1 millimeter deep and filled in with black paint. These may be no more than drafts, while the final images were never done, the team also suggests. Why we do not know. Local unrest, transition in power, could have been anything. Especially in 610 BCE, the Assyrian overlords lost control of southeast Anatolia once and for all, ousted by the Babylonians. And that was the end of that. The rescue excavations were permitted and supported by Turkey's Ministry of Culture and Tourism, led by San Lorifa Archaeological Museum Director Selal Udagag, and carried out by experts, which I cannot pronounce, and their workers. So more is coming from the Haran University on this relief. And just the whole idea that we know so little about the Assyrians and their amazing art and the pine cone and the connection to the Sumerian gods. Who were these people that wore watches 4,000 years ago? It's anyone's guess, but an Assyrianized rock panel with figures from Bozbuk in southeastern Turkey has just been released about a week and a half ago. And you're going to get the whole paper, link below. Hope you enjoyed the video and hope you got something out of it. Science is not settled. In fact, it is so unsettled, it's unsettling. And that's a boon to knowledge. Share this video. Become a Patreon and support the work we do. And be safe. We love you.